These Romans, they're making our lives more difficult every day. Believe me, John, I know. For years I worked collecting taxes, and every year the governor wants more. But at least when I was a tax collector, I was provided for. What am I supposed to do now? I've been following Jesus for 6 months, and I'm practically broke.
Oh, yeah? Well, try making a living on a fishing boat sometime, Matthew. That's no festival, you know. I've been with Jesus for nearly a year, and I will admit, at times, I'm not convinced that God will always provide. He sure seems to be providing for the Romans, though, at our expense.
Well, we've all heard the stories all our lives about how our forefathers leaving Egypt trusted God and were provided for. Every morning while they wandered through the wilderness, Jehovah provided them with a bounty of manna and quail.
And Jesus has taught us that if we have faith, God will provide. But when we spend day after day fishing and return with empty nets, it's pretty hard to have faith. I trust Jesus, but sometimes it's just so hard to see clearly when you don't know where your provisions are coming from.
Yeah, well, Jesus will be here soon, and we can ask him what he thinks of all this. Oh, here he is now.
Hi guys, I trust you're well, but you both look a bit puzzled. What's going on?
Yes, we're fine. We were just discussing this business about having faith in God to provide for our needs. The past few months have been difficult for us. How can we have faith when times are so hard?
Well, I thought we had discussed this before, but I see the point could use some reinforcement. You both remember the story of King Solomon. Solomon made an alliance with the Pharaoh of Egypt and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his palace, the temple of the Lord, and the wall around Jerusalem. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places, because the temple had not yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given to him by his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burned incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon, because that was the most important high place, and Solomon sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this kindness to him and given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart and the ability to distinguish right from wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon asked for this. So God said to him, "Because you have asked for this, and you have not asked for long life or wealth for yourself and the death of your enemies, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so there never will have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that during your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me as your father David did, I will also give you a long life." Then Solomon awoke and realized it had been a dream. He then returned to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings and gave a great feast for all his court.
Yes, Jesus, we know that story. We're not kings, and God doesn't talk to people like that anymore. That doesn't seem very helpful.
Well, that's because I hadn't finished yet. That's only part of the tale. And although it seems most people know that part of the story of Solomon, they either forget or choose to ignore the rest of it. Don't you remember how that story ends? Many years go by, and Solomon's kingdom is prosperous beyond any other on earth. But he became complacent and lazy and developed a sense of entitlement. He overindulged in every sense pleasure imaginable, the best food and wine available and entertainment, and enjoyed the company of more beautiful women than he could name. God did not look upon this favorably, and so he became angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. And although he had forbidden him to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to him, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my decrees and covenants as I have commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates."
Just don't understand. Doesn't God want us to enjoy the prosperity we get from him?
Well, yes, of course he does, but what the story of Solomon tells us is that when we do receive God's abundance, we must always remember what the source of our good is. God first, God in the middle, and God last. And Solomon forgot that. So let me tell you another little story that I think will help, because there's more to having an abundant life that is entering the kingdom of heaven than simply praying to God. The kingdom of heaven is like 10 maidens who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The 5 foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The 5 wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, so they became drowsy and fell asleep. But at midnight the cry rang out, "The bridegroom is here, come out to meet him." The maidens all awoke and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both us and you. Go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buying the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The maidens who were prepared went in with him to the wedding feast, and the doors were shut. Later the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they cried, "open the door for us." "No," he replied, "truly I tell you, I do not know you. So therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour."
Jesus, I always love listening to your stories, but their meaning is not always immediately obvious to me. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this story means in our daily lives? After all, I'm no maiden.
Well, that's true. The maidens in the story represent the 5 senses, but they have 2 meanings. 5 in the inner realm and 5 in the outer. The way to supply oil for the maidens' lamps, even the foolish ones, is to affirm that the life source, that is spirit, that gives the power to all of our senses, is not material, but spiritual. The 5 wise maidens had enough understanding to raise their senses to a spiritual level, but the 5 foolish maidens did not. So when the time for understanding was at hand, that is the arrival of the bridegroom, the wise maidens received the power and the joy that the Christ gives, symbolized by the wedding feast. The 5 foolish maidens, however, had more work to do, so they were not there when the time for understanding was at hand. But it's not all bad news for the foolish maidens, for God is merciful and patient and gives us ample opportunities to learn and grow, and then to apply what we've learned. The Lord's creation is boundless, and there will be more wedding feasts for those who are then prepared.
Let me see if I understand you correctly. You're saying we must connect ourselves to Spirit and realize that if we pay attention and are open to receive God's blessings, there are lots of opportunities for claiming abundance and prosperity with us every day. Because it's not enough to be only attentive to opportunities, but we must also be receptive. We can recognize them all we want, but if we do not believe that they are ours to claim, it won't do us any good. And the opposite is also true. We can be open to God's good all day long, but if we aren't paying attention to the abundant opportunities around us, we won't be able to see them in order to claim them. Like you said before, look at the birds of the air. They never question their right to an abundant living, but they must do something about it. God may feed the birds, but he doesn't throw the food in their nest.
That's right, John. I'm pleased to see that you're learning so quickly. Understanding that the lessons of stories like these have a direct effect on our lives is the key.
Rabbi, I now better understand that we must not just pray to God for our good, but we must also do something in this world to express our understanding of his spiritual laws. But certainly, each of us is blessed by God with different abilities. I mean, a strong, sturdy man makes a better farmer than one who is not so. A good cook makes a better innkeeper than one who does not cook so good. If God wants us all to enjoy the infinite abundance of his creation, why has he each blessed us with different levels of ability?
That's a really good question, and I've got a story that I'm sure will help you understand. Using our abilities is like a man going on a journey who called his servants to him and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2, and another 1 bag of gold, each according to their ability. And then he went away. The servant who received 5 bags of gold immediately went out and put his money to work for him and gained 5 bags more. So too the one who received 2 bags of gold gained 2 bags of more. But the one who received 1 bag of gold went out and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master returned and settled accounts with him. The servant who received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have brought you 5 more. The master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, so I'll put you in charge of many things. Come share in your master's happiness. Then the servant who received 2 bags of gold came. Master, you've entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have brought you 2 more. Again, the master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things, so I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. But then the servant who received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, and that you harvest where you had not sown, and gather where you had not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and dug a hole in the ground and hid your money. See, here's what belongs to you. The master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew I harvest where I had not sown, and gathered where I had not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned I would have received it back with interest. So, take that 1 bag of gold from him, and give it to the other who has 10, because whoever has will be given more, and they will have abundance. And whoever does not have, even what little they have will be taken from them. Now, throw that worthless servant into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
That seems pretty harsh. After all, the 3rd servant didn't actually lose his master's money. Why would his master be so stern?
That's a really good question. The master in the story represents God's spiritual laws. These laws are universal and unchanging. Spiritual gifts, be they life, love, or truth, in fact, every inherent ability of humanity, all have their root in God. All gifts from Spirit must be used to our fullest abilities. The confident person uses what's given to them, and it meets with the approval of the divine law, and they are led to greater opportunities. But the too cautious person buries their talent because they're afraid that it won't meet the requirements of the law, which they believe to be strict and exact. The world is full of people who have an ability they are afraid to use because it seems so insignificant to them. The fact is that one includes all the other. And anyone who launches boldly into an activity of spiritual gifts with a single perception of truth soon finds that there is a steady increase, and in time will enter into the joy of the Lord. Industry, activity, and boldness should be the motto of anyone who lacks confidence in their ability to do things spiritually. Cultivate your spiritual nature with the same zeal you would your trade or business. Be bold and fearless in claiming for yourself your highest good as a spiritual being. And once you're able to do that, then those worldly things you do will naturally attract the abundance of Lord's creation to you.
So you're saying when a person is willing and eager, God joins in?
Well, not just God, but all the power of the divine laws of creation.
Well, how do I know that what I'm perceiving as opportunity is actually opportunity and not some false idea my non-spiritual self thinks is true?
Right. Sometimes I think what I'm doing is right and good, but it ends up going sideways on me.
These are both really good questions, and I think one more short story will help to clarify the point. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. When the wheat sprouted heads, then the weeds also appeared. The man's servants came to him and said, Master, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? An enemy did this, he said. Well, do you want us to go pull them up? No, he replied, let them both grow to the harvest, because while you are pulling them up, you may also uproot the wheat with them.
So he should let them both grow into harvest together?
That's right.
Okay. You see, because I've been listening to your teachings for several months now, and I think I'm beginning to get where you're going with these parables. Let me see if I understand the symbolism of this story. This story shows that there's both a mixture of good and evil in our consciousness. Through study and prayer, we deliberately plant good thoughts, constructive thoughts, symbolized by the wheat, but are oft dismayed when we still find destructive thoughts, symbolized by the weeds, lingering in our minds. The weeds are planted by our sense consciousness, symbolized by the enemy, in a time when we are not on the alert spiritually, symbolized by the sleeping men. Our first impulse would be to tear up the weeds immediately, thus forcibly cast out the destructive thoughts. This action would be unwise. Better to let them both grow into harvest together. It would be difficult in the early stages of spiritual development to thoroughly cleanse the mind. If one attempted to do this, they might destroy much which is good, along with that which is bad. When enough spiritual understanding has been attained, symbolized by the time of harvest, a separation can safely be made, and the good ideas preserved, while the evil beliefs cast out. So, am I getting the hang of this?
Sure sounds like it.
Yes, and as we learn and grow in spiritual understanding, our powers of discernment will also grow, so that at the next seed time, fewer weeds will be sown with the wheat.
That's right. So now do you both understand how having faith in God ensures one's prosperity?
Yes, we always must put spirit first and trust that God is our source and use the abilities which God has given us to manifest abundance and prosperity. This food looks good.
Also, we must learn to be able to tell what is right and good, at the same time remaining mindful and open to the divine laws we use to connect ourselves to Spirit. And by doing so, we can accomplish many great things.
That's right. The one thing I would like to accomplish now is to fill my stomach. Let's eat.